Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics FPL. It's Fran here. I'm back with my Game Week 23 team selection. Now, the first thing I'll actually do is going to be a Game Week 22 team review. It's a very short and simple review, really, to be honest. I think there were some clear mistakes in terms of the benching order. One thing I was considering heavily was whether I should replace Rafinha with Gray in the previous week, and clearly that didn't pan out to be the great option, putting Rafinha on my bench. I have to be completely honest and say I don't think I really expected Cody to score, to be quite honest, off the bench. So that was a big surprise, but Cody did exceptionally well, and he is definitely a player I did pick on purpose for a double kind of sort of a bench boost team selection. And it was kind of nice to actually see that my bench did well regardless. A little bit sad that I actually didn't take the option to go for a bench boost. But as I have said on Twitter, especially in the last few kind of days and weeks, is that we are at a point in the season where we're not really actually at the halfway point in the season. Or at least we're not really at 23 as it should really look like in previous years. A lot of teams have missed games. For example, a team like Burnley have only played 17 games. So there's actually going to be a lot of volatility in FPL, and that's a really nice thing that we could benefit from in the weeks to come as we actually look at players who will have double game weeks and triple game weeks that we usually don't have. And as these kind of players look to kind of make back the lost time in terms of games due to postponements, we will benefit from that. And as we know, the key miss this week was going to be the lack of Fernandes, and that was because I did knee jerk unfortunately into James Maddison. So Fernandes would have been the alternative option as the basic kind of like midfield king, right? Who had a very good and promising double game week, even though Maddison did score and to be honest was a pick that we did intentionally pick for the purpose of kind of recouping these kind of double game weeks and benefiting from Maddison in very, very kind of good games. I'm pretty happy with the decision to have Maddison because I think those games will have to be played sometime in the near future, and he will probably get the feature for our team and actually do well in that kind of circumstance. I'm also happy that I'm a little bit ahead of the curve in the sense that with the early wild card, I do actually have Rafinha who can come off my bench this week and actually play. And as far as the team review goes, I think it's only just a little bit dismaying to see how poorly Everton really did. And it's nice in a sense that Rafa Benitez got sacked. Perhaps we're going to see a little bit of an upswing from Everton. But I think what it does tell me about my Game Week 23 decision is that I will probably move at least a little bit away from Everton players. So that probably is going to be at least maybe a reduction of Gray or Calvert-Lewin, depending if there's any kind of late kind of maybe double Game Week news. But I think the easy and simple move is going to be as such. For me, the simple first option that I actually have is going to be to move to someone like Coutinho. And the reason why I've not gone for potentially a third Man City midfielder is something I'll discuss with my option 2, because that could be a Man City midfielder. With Coutinho, you have someone who will have double game weeks to kind of recoup, and he will be playing in those games in the near future. The one question mark is going to be fitness and whether he will be playing consistent minutes. And the fact that at least Aston Villa have a very kind of healthy competition from a goal scoring point of view, where they've got Ramsey, Watkins, Ings, and even Buendia, who will all be options going forwards, who we might have to kind of pick between, right? I don't really see myself going for maybe a double up of Aston Villa at this point in time. I think it's about making the educated guess and kind of getting it right. And I think Coutinho is a good option because we know for most part of his career he has been a very, very kind of dynamic 10 or even a winger, and he will benefit from a kind of system where he probably will be given a little bit more of a freer role. And I think they will really benefit from his ability to actually be direct. And we know from past experience that he has all the ability to be very progressive as a player and very aggressive as well. And that's what I think will benefit us from an FPL point of view. It really kind of reminds me of when Lingard joined West Ham, and it seemed like he played in a very kind of free way and was unleashed in a sense. And I really think this could be a very similar situation for someone like Coutinho, who has found it very hard, to be honest, at Barcelona, and will probably find it quite easy to come back to the Premier League in a league where he has, at least in the past, dominated. So this will be, I think, a crossroads where we either go for someone like a Coutinho, keep our team quite differential, and actually trust in the process in a sense, with kind of having a player who hasn't played much and trusting in his historic prowess, and also just, to be honest, the very kind of brief but very kind of magical display that he had as a super sub versus Man United. So that is going to be the gut move this week, really, just to go straight for Coutinho, know that he has double game weeks to come, and that he simply is an all-time player when it comes down to FPL, especially at this kind of price point at 7.0. It's very nice that he's not at 7.5, where he doesn't really have to compete. The other option around this kind of price range is going to be someone like Foden, but for me, one of the issues with Foden is going to be the minutes, because as AFCON is shortly going to finish, and we know that, for example, a team like Algeria has been knocked out. We know that Mahrez will come back into the side very quickly for Man City, and even though Mahrez is not directly competing with Foden for a position in the team, that just means that the spots are much more contested. You already have Jesus on the bench week on week, sometimes Sterling on the bench, and that is a little bit of a worry for me with the minutes of Foden. Perhaps there will be times in the season going forwards where he will have more diminished minutes, and the person who has the most locked on minutes, with exception to Bernardo, who is basically physically always in shape. And as we saw in his kind of hallmark season around 2 years ago, Bernardo is very much capable of playing the full 90 minutes every game. Another player who is very much similar to that, with exception to when he's actually injured, is going to be someone like a KDB, and that's going to be my option too. The one drawback with KDB as my option two is going to be the fact that he will basically hold that spot that Salah occupies in my team away from me, and that's a big concern, right? Because if I go with KDB now, I don't really have too much money in the bank. I will have a little bit of spare to maybe upgrade another midfielder potentially, but there is a very kind of tight clash flow there where there isn't much to maneuver unless I actually go out of the strikers. And obviously in the situation now, we still actually have West Ham who have reasonably good games, but it seems like Bowen is actually good enough to cover perhaps this kind of West Ham attack. And maybe it's a good time to also look at moving away from someone like an Antonio and even a Calvert-Lewin, budgeting down to players like a St. Maximin, Tony, or even a Broja. And that perhaps is going to be my option if I really want to go for a double premium structure in the future. Obviously, if I go for Foden, then I can still accommodate for the strikers that I have in place at this point in time, and maybe Calvert-Lewin can be interchanged with someone like a Watkins or an Ings, which at least hopefully covers, Coutinho, who would be missed in this team structure if I do go for someone like a Foden instead of Coutinho. That could be an option too. That would be a little bit, I think, tough to go for because the team overall will be so strong. It's going to be hard picking an XI every week. And the kind of benefit of having a premium or even two premiums at times, sometimes with KDB and Salah, is that kind of locks down these two positions in your team, and it makes the kind of selection process a lot easier. At this point in time, obviously, Cody is someone who is giving me perpetual bench points, which is not entirely beneficial this week on week, other than kind of inflating my team value, which, as we kind of approach the end of the season, that's not necessarily entirely beneficial. We're just kind of going for points here. So that's going to be kind of the decisions that I really have to kind of play around with. But I really do think there's maybe some value in maybe cutting down at one of Antonio and DCL. Potentially it could be DCL if Everton don't look exciting at all with their coach, even though they have really, really good fixtures. I'm tempted to keep DCL, tempted to take Gray out for this point in time and not have a double up with Everton because they just don't look very good. And I don't think much can actually change in the near future, unless something kind of explosive happens, like such as, for example, Ranieri joining this Watford side and making them at least a little bit more attacking from that kind of point of view. So we'll see what happens there. My opinion is probably that I will be benching Antonio and Calvert-Lewin this week. I know it looks a little bit outrageous. I think the only other option that I could really maybe put on the bench is going to be Connor Cody, but I still think he is a very good matchup against Brentford. We know this Brentford side has been severely kind of depleted lately. For me, the big thing with Cody, even though actually the last time Brentford played Wolves, Wolves got absolutely thrashed, is that this Wolves team have been very, very cohesive, very, very compact, and I really do think that they can actually bag a clean sheet in this maybe revenge game versus Brentford. So that's my point of view there. Perhaps I'll maybe knee-jerk a little bit, maybe even go for a -4 if I really think there's a much more explosive strike at this point in time. I just don't really expect Antonio and Calvert-Lewin to have fantastic games in the next week, where I think arguably, United and Villa have been rather competent in the last few weeks from a defensive point of view. Yes, still losing their clean sheets at point in time, but I really think that I have enough coverage of the West Ham attack with just Jared Bowen, who's basically been exceptional lately. And that's going to be my opinion for the kind of team selection this week. I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead. In terms of the captaincy, if I was to go for, let's say, something like an option one, it probably would be actually going to someone like maybe a Cancelo as a first option captaincy, and then maybe something like Rafinha or even Dennis as a vice captain. In option two, if I go for the KDB structure, I think it would make a lot of sense to actually just simply put the captaincy on KDB and kind of bank on the fact that he has a fantastic fixture versus Southampton in this game week 23. So I hope you guys have a wonderful week ahead, and I will see you guys very shortly in the live stream, hopefully.